Hey everyone, I have some pretty gosh darn exciting news. Last week, I went up to San Francisco to check out the first sort of gameplay reveal of Baldur's Gate 3. I didn't get hands on myself, but they had a multi-hour demo that they took us through. So I have a lot of notes, a lot of things to cover, yeah.
Did you get breaks? Was it literally just like 2+ hours straight of just nonstop Baldur's Gate information?
We did get breaks.
Okay.
We did get breaks. They were kind. But, Brandon, I have a lot that I want to get into and a lot that I want to compare it to, but I have to get your reaction to the opening of the game. And I don't want to go into too many story details, but I want to give you the very beginning, like the kind of the first thing that you see. I was not expecting, and maybe I should have, considering the teaser that they did, where that guy was like horrifically changing.
I recall.
Yeah. As a fan of trailers, you can appreciate how effective that was.
That was a direction. That was an idea someone had.
Right.
They were like, this best showcases what we have in mind for Baldur's Gate 3. Like, okay.
They don't let up,
Cool.
dude. I had to, when I was watching the opening cinematic, actually to look away. If you don't like things going into people's eyes, you will not like this. And I like I said, I don't want to give too much away, but basically the setup is that you are infected with this tadpole, and it is slowly turning you into a mind flayer. And you have to figure this out and fix this before it is too late. And you kind of see the process of the tadpole going into your eyes. You see it happening to other people. And it's a remarkably grotesque setup, which is cool. But what I immediately appreciated about Baldur's Gate 3, I feel like I play a lot of fantasy games where it's like, I feel like I've heard this story before, where the aesthetic is very similar, and that was something about Baldur's Gate originally that was so fantastic, especially in Baldur's Gate 2. Baldur's Gate 1 has this, but I think especially in Baldur's Gate 2, it just kind of gets weird off the bat. And that is what Baldur's Gate 3 felt like it was continuing, where they kind of go into Mind Flayer culture, and you're seeing them operate this ship in this really weird way. There are like these organic things, like these muscles that they're using to manipulate the ship, and it's just really crazy and creative and cool. And I know you played, what did you play? The campaign that you did with your friends. Ravenholm?
Oh, just to a deal. Oh, yeah, we did Curse of Strahd.
Curse of Strahd, that was
and among other things, we were doing something Storm. It's something the Storm of Souls or Souls of something, or that we're doing, which is kind of like the pseudo follow-up to Curse of Strahd or something also in that vein.
I just know you were a fan of gothic horror. And
oh, yeah.
Although this is not quite that, I think it's within your wheelhouse.
Definitely horror.
Yeah.
I mean, there was certainly a grotesqueness, and it's interesting. So I guess my question would be, does like everyone have this? Is this something that's like infecting a lot of different people, or are you special in this way that you haven't been turned yet, or you're like resistant to it somehow? Or
very good question. Not everyone has it, but a number of people have it, and you end up, and you don't have to, of course. Freedom is a big thing that we'll keep coming back to, but you will meet other people, and some of them will make a case where it's like, hey, we both need to figure this out. Why don't we team up? But the other thing that is interesting about being infected with this tadpole is you can communicate telepathically with others. And that plays into the role-playing.
Okay.
As well. A lot of my notes, Brandon, are... This is very similar to Divinity Original Sin 2. And I think people who played that game will immediately see things that are carried over from that game. And what I liked about Divinity Original Sin 2, one of the biggest parts of it is how much freedom that you had. And they keep calling Baldur's Gate 3 a systemic game. And that kept coming up over and over and over again. I think people are really going to be blown away by the freedom that you have. Like, in a lot of RPGs... I feel like your kind of response is, well, I'm going to talk my way out of this, or I'm going to fight, or maybe I'm going to, pay them money. Baldur's Gate 3 seems like it has way more options than that, just like Divinity did when it came to creativity. Like, you like archery, right? So when they say, like, a systemic game, if there's a fire going on and you're a bow user, you can just dip your arrows in that fire, and now you have fire arrows.
Cool.
If there are rafters up above you, you can be like, okay, well, I want to climb those rafters and just climb over the entire fight. And so you have so many options with things that you can interact with, and really the limit is on you creatively. So if there are a bunch of boxes and you need to get somewhere, you can actually move the boxes around in the world, create stairs, and then climb up.
Oh, cool.
Which is really neat. And I think that is just so true to the spirit of D&D. And if you're familiar with 5th edition rules, that's the rule set that this is using. And so you have things like advantage and disadvantage. And I love the way that they're doing the dice rolls in the game, where it's a very dramatic thing. So if you have to make like a check on something, you get a giant D20 that comes up on the screen.
Oh, nice.
And actually roll it. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Something that Divinity Original Sin 2 did as well is you can like just make your own character, or you can have a bunch of characters that are sort of like heroes and you can follow their story. And so in our demo, they picked a vampire. And what was really crazy to me about the demo is going through it, I forgot that there was any other choice. Like so much of the dialogue and so much of the story felt like it was being shaped around this specific vampire.
And that's what I really felt from Divinity. I think that's like the number one thing that I took away from that was like, wow, this is really changing. You can see even just with people that were in your party, like how different people would react to them. And
yes.
Yeah. And it was fun because it wasn't just following their story and having it be personalized for the main character, but there was just so many examples wherever you went that would teach you everything about the world. So you really get a sense, even after talking to 1 or 2, 3 people when you were traveling, like, oh, okay, I'm starting to get a sense of like what it's like to live here, why these people are the way they are, why they have their attitudes. And
definitely. Minor complaint that I had about Divinity Original Sin 2 is I loved the characters and the party members that you could recruit and how interesting they were, but I think sometimes the way that the party interacted, it didn't always feel as constant as I felt like it should be. Like there were definitely times where I was like, I was hoping there'd be a little bit more here, or just moments where it wasn't as impactful as it was in other games. And something that I got immediately in Baldur's Gate 2 is I feel like the party, forms very quickly, and the interaction and the banter that you have and the personalities that come out almost immediately, it feels stronger than it did in Divinity Original Sin 2. They feel like more of a
2
presence.
is Baldur's Gate 2 or 3? You said 2.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm not Baldur's Gate. Divinity Original Sin 2.
Yes, but you said it was different in Baldur's Gate 3.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I meant Baldur's Gate 3. The other thing, and you'll be a big fan of this, in Divinity Original Sin 2, it is like those old Infinity Engine games that when you're talking to somebody, it's just like their portrait in a text box.
Right.
This is a more cinematic camera for conversations, which is really nice. And I think people who played...
For everything? For all of the...
For conversations, yes.
Oh, wow.
And I think people who played Divinity Original Sin 2 will really notice a huge graphical leap, like right away. Like this is a better looking game than Divinity Original Sin 2. And it's nice that when you're talking to people, you're getting them expressing, you're getting more emotion, you're getting more animation. And so I think that is also plays into kind of the presence that your party members have, which I think is really neat.
That's an undertaking to get all of that animation, all that VO.
It is.
That's a lot.
Yes, it is an undertaking. It's a very general thing to say, but like obviously I would have preferred getting hands-on just so I can tell you more about like, okay, this is what it feels like to go into this basic situation. But even watching the head of Larian play, something that I liked is I was like, I feel like I'm just watching D&D is what's happening. Because he would come into a situation or he would get into a fight, and I feel like in a lot of RPGs, you just kind of have like this go-to method that you have where it's like, okay, well, I have these skills and I know it's going to go this way. You couldn't do that in Baldur's Gate 3. Something would happen, the environment would change, like something would light on fire, or there would be fog, or something would surprise him. And he constantly had to improvise based on the situation, and he would narrate everything that was going on. You could tell, like, he's run this demo multiple times, but he hasn't encountered this specific situation.
Cool.
And because it's D&D, like, he would make jumps to places, and he'd have to roll, and then he would fail the roll. Or he would try to do a persuasion check, and he would fail it. But what's great is when he failed, particularly in the conversations, it wouldn't be like a stone wall. It would be like... Now the story's just diverting. Now it's just going in a different way.
That was one of my biggest surprises because I was so intimidated when I first started playing D&D. I was like, God, I really don't want to mess this up. And I found that failing was some of the most exciting things. So like actually when you would try to do a plan and it wouldn't work, and then you would try to save it at the end of the day, and then things would happen. Like it's because I was like, that sucks. Like despite our, however much we level, there's sometimes it's just not going to happen, and that's kind of frustrating, like a gun that jams. You're like, I don't understand why that would be exciting in a game.
Right.
And I was like, oh, it is. It's strange.
Yeah, because it feels like the way that Baldur's Gate 3 is written, it's not just written in a way where it's like, okay, we want you to do this thing, and if you didn't try again, it's like, no, this is the story that we're going to give you if you fail.
Yeah.
And that's so much better, in my opinion. And just how many things they clearly thought out. Again, we were playing as this specific character, a vampire, who you don't have to play. You don't have to be a vampire. Mm-hmm. And it was fun playing it with a crowd because he would solicit like audience feedback, like, what do you want me to do? And of course the audience wanted him to be as evil as possible.
Yeah, of course.
And
especially if it's a preview, you're like,
right.
We got this save file to burn, let's do it.
Exactly. I wanted him to be good, but you have a dark cleric in your party, or he had a dark cleric in his party. And he was just like, okay, well, we're going to feed on them now. And you can even role play it to the degree where it's like, you can be the kind of person where it's like, I'm going to feed on you immediately, and I don't care about humans. I'm just kind of staking my claim. I can try to resist the urge, but eventually give into it, or I can overcome it. And just within this one character, there felt like there was an incredible amount of granularity, for sure. But I think coming into not necessarily criticisms, but maybe what I anticipate people saying is so many of my notes, like clearly they're building off of work that they've already done in past games. And so I see a lot of comparisons to Divinity Original Sin 2. So if you don't like that game or you don't like the direction where the studio is going, this isn't some radically different thing. It's sort of taking the Divinity Original Sin 2 template, adapting it for 5th edition rules, in an admittedly fascinating world with a pretty crazy storyline with this Mind Flayer stuff.
That sounds like the pitch. That sounds like the planning meeting, that when they first got them in, they're like, this is why we're giving this to your team.
Right.
Because you guys seem that you're so in a wonderful position to do this. So that's where my expectations were set.
Right.
Having, it been forever since I played Baldur's Gate 2, and, having checked out the stuff that they've made previously. Even like seeing what they've done at previous. I think I know the guy that played this.
Yeah.
He played Divinity Original Sin 2 for me at PAX. And you could clearly tell he was just like, great, let's mess around with this. Let's actually, have fun and just kind of do what we feel like doing while we're going through the demo. And like I said, just based on, I remember that was really one of like the huge takeaways just from that show. It was like, I can't believe how much detail that we have. So it's interesting that it sounds pretty heavy. It sounds pretty horrific. I wonder if, how did you feel that, and he played a vampire on top of that. How did you feel like the darkness was kind of like, did it kind of cover everything that was going on in the demo, or did it have like, were there lighthearted characters you talked to? Was there interesting worlds that weren't just like covered in, clouds and rain? And
yeah, I think that's
a lot of sadness in that teaser.
That's something that I really want to emphasize is when I'm talking about like, oh, I had to look away during the opening cutscene, or hey, this vampire is being vicious. It is not like an oppressive darkness. There's so much levity. The dark cleric that you're lit with, you're having a conversation with somebody else, and she comes up, she's like, I didn't mean to overhear, but I did anyway. And just there's some jokiness between the characters. And every place that he went to, and this was disappointing that because if I was playing, I would have just gone hard on one of these areas that he went to, but you would run into like a problem where it's like, these people are being attacked. You can get involved in this, and you can spend hours doing this.
Oh, dude, I wouldn't go anywhere.
Right. Or
be prepared, because you're gonna like review Baldur's Gate 3 or play a lot of it, depending on what shakes down whenever it comes out, and you're gonna be like, Jones, you've been to this area, and I'm like, dude, I haven't gone anywhere, man.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I can't.
I mean, the Divinity review took me forever.
I gotta go. Yeah.
For that very reason, but no, there are a lot of people that I think the best way to describe it is both in your kind of immediate circle and the world at large. There's a lot going on in the world, and there are different people that view differently about it. And so you get to decide, okay, where do I stand? Once I make a stand, how are people around me going to respond to that? And I can kind of engage in whatever I want. Like, you run into kind of this like druid society, and he's like, you can just get in with them and you can do all this stuff with them. They're going to have their own storyline. We're going to ignore that today. Or there was something that you needed. You needed to go somewhere. And he's like, here's all the different ways that you can do it. You can talk to this person. You can help them. And It's so cool because I remember getting into D&D in middle school and playing D&D video games. The attitude that I had was, oh, it's neat that they could get this aspect of D&D to work. But the rest of it was just a video game, if that makes any sense, where it felt like they kind of had to shove a square peg into a round hole. But watching Baldur's Gate 3 and Divinity Original Sin 2 also evoke the same feeling. It's like, this is just virtual D&D. Like, I feel like I have the freedom. I feel like I can be creative, and the game is begging me to do it, which is really cool.
So kind of the best of both worlds, depending on how you look at it, because they're bringing their expertise and their model. It's not broke. I don't think they should fix it. I think they really, kind of like Witcher, and obviously it's a much different game, but you see a development studio that's so committed to a character world, and it's just so exciting to see those games evolve. But at the same time, adopting, 5th edition, which is great, the current state of D&D. How was it in terms of like races and stuff? We have like Dragonkin in this, were there elves in the party? Like
they went through a number of races.
Cool.
So you had like tieflings, you had obviously like you had dwarves and elves and halflings and an assortment of things. They said very specifically these are the only races and classes that we're going to show off today. So I don't know how deep the rabbit hole goes, but yes, there's a variety of stuff. Something about Divinity, though, that I think is interesting, and I'm curious to see, like, going into Baldur's Gate 3, having played Divinity Original Sin 2, and obviously being, relatively familiar with 5th edition rules, I felt like I could understand everything that was happening. But when you have so much freedom, and you're not used to it, like, learning Divinity Original Sin 2 was definitely a struggle for me, where it was like, oh my God, okay, I need to think about that variable. And you eventually get the hang of it, but I wonder if for people that are going into this, with how good it looks, with how much hype it's getting, if they're going to feel overwhelmed. There was a whole tutorial section where you do kind of get acclimated, but unfortunately I didn't get to see that. And so I wonder how well they're going to onboard new players.
Well, again, that's failure to me in D&D.
That's
like
true.
When things, again, I'm just love ranged, love the bow, and so it's like I would deal with a lot of combat encounters being well outside of attack range. There was a lot of like when I was doing like the Strahd stuff, there was a lot of like mind manipulation. They would like turn me against the party, so I would like be doing damage to everybody. But when things just wouldn't work out because that's how the dice decided they weren't going to work out, then you are forced to, okay, what other abilities do I have? What abilities do I have to evade, to hide, to kind of control, what's going on, to help my teammates? What teammate compositions are best? What's the best order for like people to attack in? I think just over time you learn those things. So I think it sounds like the kind of thing where it's not necessarily going to ruin the experience. Like, I don't know. Again, I haven't seen this game being played, but like, I find something like that has like a ton of systems. As long as you aren't constantly having a tutorial that's set up and teaching me like absolutely every step, and it's like we have to teach you everything. It's like it's all just there. If you really want to dig in, you can find it. But if you just want to blast your way through stuff, we'll let you do that for a little bit, so you can have fun, so you can get to know the world. Again, the freedom. So we're not holding you back from those things. But then when you after a while begin to question things and can I manipulate it? Oh, I can. Or you find yourself in a tough situation. Like, I just have to get out of here and I just got to bail on this fight altogether. Oh, I can.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a classic generic thing to say, especially about computer role-playing games, but a large part of the appeal is I want to talk about my experience with you. What dialogue choices did you make? What build did you do? And I think what's so exciting about Baldur's Gate 3 is you can break that down to such a minute level where it's like, whoa, that fight for you went so differently. It was almost like we had a completely different fight. Like, we interacted with different things in the world. Different people died. And I don't know. It's crazy to me. I can't get over how much freedom this studio is bringing into it. And, we keep seeing it with a bunch of different things, and it's curious to see where Cyberpunk goes. But I feel like this is the Dungeons and Dragons game like I've always wanted, that you would dream up, basically.
Yeah, I wonder if you're that team, if you're like psyched out by working on D&D. It's like, oh, we can't mess this up because there's so many people that are maybe not that familiar with us that are going to be signed up for this because they love Baldur's Gate, they love D&D, or if you're not nervous and you're like, oh, we had to kind of used that model to create our own world, for so long, to build up our own franchise. But here it's like they've already laid the groundwork.
Right.
The best parts of this have already been established. And 5th edition isn't like a drastically new thing.
No,
so they have had a lot of time with it.
They seem remarkably confident, and I don't know if that's just based on the success of Divinity or what. But I think another thing that points to that is when you have something like Baldur's Gate that's been gone for so long in the video game space, I think there is a tendency to throw in easy references. Like, oh, okay, there's that line, or there's that looks similar, or that's an allusion to this. And Baldur's Gate 3 didn't do that. At least that I could spot.
I don't know if I would catch any of that.
Yeah, there was no pandering. It was like, yes, this is Baldur's Gate 3, but this is Larian Studios doing Baldur's Gate 3. These are our characters. This is our conflict. This is our thing. And there really was. There was so much confidence in the whole project that it was really endearing. I love that they rather than relying on the past, it seems like Larian keeps pushing things forward. And that's how I felt playing Divinity Original Sin 2. That was the big takeaway in my review, is it's like, these guys aren't just making an RPG, they're trying to break down what an RPG is and really try to move certain aspects ahead. And they're not going to nail everything, but like you can just see that ambition with them. And they're not the biggest studio in the world. And so it's amazing to me how big these guys go after things, and that there's already so much in Baldur's Gate 3, and it feels like they haven't even been working on it that long. So,
yeah, I wonder. Yeah. They are definitely a studio that takes their time,
right?
And so, do we have any idea? I mean, you didn't get a chance to play it. Do we have any idea where they are in the development cycle?
I do, but I don't think I'm allowed to say.
Oh.
I think that is something that I can't talk about. We got an email saying like, "Hey, we're talking about this, but don't say anything." So yeah, unfortunately, that is not information for me to talk about in this video.
But yeah, it's when you have a team like this that's given such an opportunity. That's a question of like, is it are they still working on other projects, or is it just like everybody at the studio like, all right, everybody stop what you're doing. This is just too much of a fun opportunity.
Yeah, for as excited as I am about Baldur's Gate 3, there's still a lot of work to be done, and I don't say this in like a really a critical or sneering way, but they're like, hey, there are bugs and you're going to see things, and so there'd be conversations like, oh, that character is freaking out in the background, or wait, that effect wasn't supposed to happen, and so there's still polishing that needs to be done, but I think the foundation of it is very promising.
And cool that you can just get that vibe just from watching them, go through that adventure.
I feel like I could just watch them all day. And like I said, it's like you're watching a D&D campaign. So.
Yeah, because these can be very personalized experiences. So it's going to be cool to see what you do, what I do.
Yeah.
I hopefully I'll have time for this by the time.
I hope so. It'd be a fun game to talk about. I really think so.
We'd have spend a long time with it before we get to talk about it.
Yes.
It's probably a long game.
Yeah. Many frame traps, I'm sure. Or I hope, I guess. Better way to say that. But yeah, thanks for chatting about the Baldur's Gate 3. It's weird saying that exists.
I know.
That we're just like, oh yeah, I went to see Baldur's Gate 3. I don't know. I've wanted to play something like this for a long time.
I haven't seen this footage yet, Ben. I don't believe you.
Yeah.
We'll see.
You will soon. Thanks.